What's up, guys? We have a game with I Like Holidays. Who doesn't? Nearly 2,200 from America. We have the white pieces, and you can see by the graph it was a very even, smooth game. I got an advantage at some point, a winning advantage. I missed the move, back to equality, and then built up another advantage. It's a super short game, only 17 moves. Um, so let's get into it. I opened up with Queen's Gambit, d4, c4. He plays some type of Slav with c6. I develop my knight, attack the pawn in the center. He develops his knight, defends the pawn in the center. I develop my knight, control this square, and prepare castling. He goes e6, which blocks in his bishop, but this is the semi-Slav, and these pawns really bolster the d5 pawn because I'm applying pressure, potentially even more pressure, and it's just covered so well now. 4 times, in fact. I just ignored this because you can win it back at a later time. Instead, I develop my queen's bishop and I pin this knight. So in a way, it's like adding more pressure to this pawn because this is a defender. So by removing a defender, it's almost like attacking this. And it's a developing move before I play e3 and close down my pawn chain, so at least it's outside the pawn chain. My opponent breaks the pin, and now I play e3, getting ready to develop my bishop and castle. My opponent goes knight bd7, supporting his knight and developing his knight to one of its 2 possible squares. So this, I guess, is some type of all theory of a semi-Slav. I develop my bishop to its most active square, which stares at the king side once he castles. And now I'm ready to castle. He moves his knight to b6. I feel like the knight belongs on d7, helping support a possible c5 or e5 one day, maybe. I'm not entirely sure, but I don't think it belongs on b6. I guess his idea is he's attacking the c4 pawn a second time, but I could just go b3 if I want and defend that pawn with a pawn. And if he takes, I take, and his knight just seems to be misplaced. It can't hop in here. He can't go here. So I don't like his move. I guess I could play b3. Maybe even queen b3. I could probably, he probably thinks that I might take maybe and he'll recapture the knight. But even there, some type of weird Grunfeldy trade. I'm not sure, but I said, you know what, let me just push c5 because this knight's supposed to help support a central thrust. Now I get to close it down with tempo, which forces him to go back, and I'm controlling this square and this square, so I feel like that I'm doing better here since I'm controlling both of these squares. So he just moved his knight back, so I'm kind of up. It's almost, it feels like I'm up 1 or 2 tempi, and castling is best. Castling is just best. It's a normal move, and then you could go and do whatever you want from there, whether that's maybe play on the queen side, maybe play in the center. Once this pawn supported more. I'm not sure, but you could do what you want from there. H4, it's weird because A, he's not castled yet. B, there's no hook. There's no pawn here to make contact with. And I don't hate it. You know, I don't need to. I don't know, maybe E5 is an idea. Huh. Yeah, maybe I should castle first. E5, pawn takes. Knight G4. Kind of position is that? It's bishop takes, queen takes. Yeah, H4 is kind of out of place, but it's still not the worst move in the world. B6, he doesn't take advantage of it with E5. He tries to break down my pawn chain from the tip and open up his bishop to, well, basically to A6. So now he's attacking this pawn 3 times. I don't want to take and develop his stuff and open up the C5 square for his pawn. So of course I bolster it with my own pawn. Now he tries to break this down, and of course I support it because I want to support this pawn chain. I want to keep my pawn on C5 to keep his pieces locked in and useless. I don't want them to get out. That's what I'm thinking anyway. So bishop goes to A6. In his mind, he's going to, the only open possibility for this bishop, you know, possibly his worst piece, and he's trying to get rid of it, so it seems logical for him. But this allows me to take, and in my mind, I did a short calculation of, I take bishop, rook takes back, something like queen d3, right? Queen to the middle, hitting the rook and just centralizing my queen as a replacement light square bishop with tempo. So I didn't really look at any other moves, and that's a very bad thing to do, obviously, because you might have better, and I did have better. I did take, he did take, but I insta-played queen d3. If I had just sat on my hands and said, okay, you know, what are my candidate moves, I would have considered, you know, more than one, and queen d3 would have been my first, but then I would have looked around the board and seen the better move because it's fairly obvious, and that is b5. It hits the rook, and that was the whole point in dragging the rook here. Because it hits the rook has to move. If the rook moves somewhere, you can take this pawn for free, hitting the knight. So you're just clearly better. So that he can't allow that. And if he takes, then you get to jump your knight in, as well as push this pawn with tempo hitting the knight, and bring the queen and the rook in, and it looks like it's kind of overwhelming. Let's see a sample line. So b5, if c takes, you do kick the knight immediately in first, and they're saying the best move for black is just to hang it. So that's how bad this position is. If they try something else like knight back, then you take the pawn. So that's the important move order difference. Take, and then you bring the queen in, and this rook is extremely out of place. The king isn't castled yet, and now this queen supports this knight. So maybe if he can try to defend, but you just add more pressure if it ever moves. Now everything's still supporting this. I did not do that. I did not play b5. I did play queen d3, which I mean, is obviously worse than b5, but if you don't see b5, then this is a decent alternative. Copium. Now he plays b5 himself, removing the option from me and kind of, in a way, removing my options on the queen side. Although I still have the space advantage, which restricts his pieces, which is nice. So here I got fancy, and I took his pawn with my knight. Because I figured, okay, I'm gonna get this pawn. He's gonna recapture. I'm gonna get a second pawn. Oops, a second pawn. So I get 2 pawns for the piece, which currently, I mean, I guess it's protecting the center. I shouldn't say it's not doing anything, but I get this pawn. I activate my queen. I pin the knight. I hit the rook. I hit this pawn a second time, and I have a passer. And basically a 3-on-1. So I figured, how bad could that be? Apparently I lost all my advantage, but it's not bad. It just wasn't absolute best. Oh no, I didn't even have advantage. Like here, yeah, I'm at 0.3, so it's just a fine normal move. It works basically. And now he does what seems like a natural move. It protects the rook. It develops the queen. And it defends this pawn another time. So why in the world is this a mistake? Can you see why this is a mistake? What options does white have here? What's a good attacking move for white? Well, you can see this knight is pinned, and he's ready to castle. So we put a stop to that with knight e5, applying a second attacker. So if he castles, you win a knight. You just take it with the knight. And if he takes back, you take back. He takes your bishop, you take with the pawn. Another benefit of my early h4. So in this position, even though I'm pressuring his knight, he's not sure what to do. He thinks these pieces are all tied down, right? He knows he can't castle, so these pieces are tied down. These guys are protecting this, and even if they didn't want to, where are they going? Where are they going, right? You can't even go anywhere. So he feels like he has no moves other than A takes B. And his best was to just shuffle the rook back. That's hilarious. But that's not very... I was gonna say it's not very human, but the point isn't to shuffle. The point is to defend the knight a second time so you can castle. So that makes perfect sense. Problem is this pawn. I'm not sure when to push, how to push, but that's a devastating pawn. But anyway, he takes here because he doesn't know what to do, and he figures I can't take this way because I'm hanging. So he's like, okay, I'm gonna win a pawn. Maybe he'll take this way. But I did not take that way. I just let him capture the pawn. I didn't care about it, and I went forward with my plan. What was my plan? Well, I was applying pressure to this guy, and this guy is the only other defender of this guy. So I remove the defender, and he takes back with the bishop. It looks like the natural recapture, so why doesn't it work? And he resigned here. Can you see why? There's a mate in 2 for white. That's right. Queen takes knight check. King has to move over. And then queen takes pawn checkmate. Boom. So he blundered mate. If he can't take with the knight because it's pinned. So if he wants the piece back, he has to take with the pawn. But now I can take the knight, or whatever that was. What was it? Yeah, the knight. And I'm up a piece. But he blundered immediately mate. So if I go through that game quickly, because it was a very short game, Yeah, this is a little weird moment. If he didn't play knight b6, I would never even really consider c5. That's not an idea I'm familiar with. I, I much prefer the structure with the tension on c4. But I couldn't help myself because he put the knight here. I still didn't have a real plan after that though. You know, before I played it, it just seemed like a good move at the time. Yeah, obviously I didn't have a plan. I mean, the natural thing is my pawn chain is this way, so it probably seems more obvious to go b4, b5. I feel like that makes more sense. I just thought that on his next move he was going to castle, and I just wanted to throw this pawn up the board. I don't know if that's a thing, but it looked like a thing. Okay, and here I need to not insta move with 11 minutes. And that's it. So I mean, he just made too many mistakes. I stole a bunch of points from this guy because he was 2200, so that's always nice. And what did they give me? Let's go, 2400. Okay. Got a win in the books. On the road to 2100. We keep climbing.